As a reward, the turtle took him to a place called Ryokujo, the Dragon Temple. It was like a palace, and they gave him a big welcoming party. Beautiful women, scrumptious feasts, breams and halibuts swimming around. He spent his time there as if within a dream. The days passed, and before he knew it, the time had come to go back. As a keepsake, he was given the tamatebako. It's a big chest with a treasure inside. So tamatebako is the turtle? This is the central premise and driving idea of Cowboy Bebop's Session 18, Speak Like a Child. The myth Jet opens the story reciting is deeply interrelated thematically and in repeated reference, but Speak Like a Child tells its own story so well that it doesn't need supplementary ideas to be thoroughly moving. The tale of Urushimataro sets up a lot of motifs and points to our relevant themes, but it isn't mandatory. In fact, Bebop does what it does so well in remixing and pivoting off of old stories and genres. So let's do a quick retelling of the tale of Urushimataro, and then on to Speak Like a Child. So really quickly, and just trying to include the important bits, Urushimataro is a very talented fisher who one day caught a bunch of boys torturing a turtle. He flipped the turtle on its back and shooed the boys away and told them to stop bothering the turtle. The next day, the turtle approached Urushimataro in the water, very grateful, and said, "Listen, thank you so much for saving me. Can I take you to the Dragon Palace, Ryokujo?" And so, Urushimataro was taken on top of the turtle's back to the Dragon Palace, Ryokujo, where he was welcomed as a guest and treated to endless food and treasure and merriment, and he fell in love with the princess of the Dragon Palace, Otohime. The princess and Urushimataro were married, and after a few days of staying and partying, Urushimataro said, remembering his duty and his loyalty to his parents, he asked to return to his home. The princess was grief-stricken but understanding and said, "Well, if you must leave, please take this treasure box, the tamatebako, the box of the jewel hand. It contains something very precious, but no matter what, you must never open the box." And Urushima promised that he would never open the box. He returned home on the tortoise back to the beach that he grew up on and found that the familiar buildings he knew from his hometown were gone. He recognized nobody's face, and he saw a stranger who called out to him. Urushimataro presented himself as Urushimataro, and the stranger said, "You can't be him. He's been dead for many, many, many years. He's a legend in this village." He says, "Please don't joke with me. I am Urushimataro, and I've not lived for 300 years. I've lived here all my life until 4 or 5 days ago." At which point, Urushimataro realized that time passed differently in Ryokujo, and that truly he did find himself in his village as it existed 300 years from when he lived. He was distraught and crushed and decided that if there was no place for him here, he would have to go back to Ryokujo, but he had no way of getting back. He said, "Surely there must be some way contained within this box." So he pulled open the red ribbon and opened it on the beach. Slowly, very slowly, he untied the red silk cord. And what did he find? There was only a purple cloud rose in the box in 3 soft wisps. For an instant, it covered his face and wavered over him, as if loath to go, and then it floated away like a vapor over the sea. Urushimataro, who was 24 years old, suddenly became very old. His back doubled up with age, his hair turned to snowy white, his face wrinkled, and he fell down dead on the beach. We open on cuts between horses racing as a crowd watches on, cheering, and a fish struggling to free itself from the hook. Just as the horse Faye bets on is about to win, the fish wriggles off the line, and the second place horse inches into first. We get our first instance of a fish motif, and we're shown these two things next to each other to make us think primarily about Faye. We already understand Spike's MO, if not really how he came to be like this, and his relationship with food is very pronounced. We all get hungry, and Spike's simple and earnest interest in food is what makes his life so rich and colorful. He's not fishing for sport, but to eat. We're asked to consider, not for the last time this episode, Faye's compulsive gambling and whether or not she can be happy, even if the die ever does land in her favor. Jet tells Edward the tale of Urushimataro, to which Ed, who seems incorrect here in their recollection of the story, but is actually acting as our sage and giving us some important piece of information, asks if Tamatebako, the jewel handbox, is the turtle. Behind Jet, a drone lowers with a company named Turtle Express on its side. This drone is carrying something precious that will instigate a fundamental change in one of our main characters, and is actually structurally identical to the Tamatebako treasure of the tale of Urushimataro. Jet pays the delivery charge on the package for Faye, which he brings to her and demands that she repay. Faye refuses and splits. Too many people want a piece of me. Jet and Spike groan about whether or not the package is poison or a bomb from people trying to get payment from her, but Spike rips it open and finds a Betamax tape, similar to VHS. It's analog, so they have no way of playing it, but Jet decides that they probably could sell it to the right buyer. The two of them find one such buyer who's an expert in 90s media like this who starts to play the tape. There's some genuine intrigue. The episode stops on a dime to let us wonder why this kind of tape, forests, and of a young girl walking in first person would ever be delivered to Faye. The tape starts to fuzz out and Spike kicks it, trying to fix it, destroying the player. Intercut, we get scenes of Faye trying her hand at dog racing, and she wins, deciding that dogs really are better than ponies. Edward looks where the only other known beta player in the universe is, and it's on Earth. We're not sure why yet, but Spike and Jet are looking for this player. At first, Jet presented this as if he just wanted his money back, but over the course of a few minutes, suddenly we're traveling to Earth in a museum to find the last Betamax player, just to see what's in that mystery tape. Faye wins again and clutches her ticket, so excited to realize that those guys were just sucking up my luck. The eye-catcher at the midpoint is a huge flex, declaring that this new genre of space western should be called Cowboy Bebop. This is an entire video unto itself probably, but I think it's featured in this episode because the episode is so self-aware that it kicks fucking ass. We follow Jet and Spike to Earth, where Faye rings into Edward asking what the gang's up to. There's some genuine hurt in her voice when she finds out they're going to her home without her. 80% of this episode is spent setting up this premise and letting it breathe, but the episode is really about Faye sitting alone in this crowded room, hurt and dejected. It holds on her from a medium distance away for what feels like a long-ass time on repeat viewings. We spend the next 5 minutes of screen time, which is an eternity for a 20-minute episode, with Spike and Jet in an American museum of some sort, with the last known Betamax player in the solar system. The best song in the series, The Egg and I, plays while these two climb down an elevator shaft and avoid getting hit by a falling elevator, slide down railways which have long since lost the stairs they were attached to, and wade through water. Notable is that Jet and Spike at the midpoint of this journey sort of grumble about why they're doing it. Both of them seem not to want to be here, and certainly it seems like at this point there's very little monetarily to be gained, so what's up? Jet references our fairy tale, saying that he understood why Urushimataro opening up the Tamatebako turned him into an old geezer. Jet gets a huge fish stuck to his leg and complains that this place is really some Ryogujo. It's not some metaphor or something ethereal, it's just that life is spent wasting time with things that feel trivial until you die. That's the central idea here. What do you do to get you by? How do you pass your days? Jet and Spike do a lot of groaning and mumbling, but they both elect to go on an adventure because, well, it beats sitting inside. These are all broken people trying to cope and keep community without getting too close to anyone. To find some way to pass your days and cope that doesn't break you or make things harder than they already are. This is conjecture if it's just about Spike and Jet, but it's not. Right after these two talk about how annoying it is that they have to come here when we know they don't have to come here, Jet wonders where Faye is, and she's gambling at the dog track again. She's coping too, just with something more temperamental. Her Tama Tobacco, perhaps, is her youth. Her lost days that she didn't need to spend with her mood dependent on how a bunch of dogs ran from far away. Maybe her Tama Tobacco is finding something that makes her more excited to be alive. Maybe it's her friends, who she wants so desperately to be wanted by, but who she can't be vulnerable with. The song playing, the Agonai, is really central here too. Bebop touts itself as being the animated manifestation of jazz and of different genres and mediums, so we do need to pay close attention to this song that's played twice in this episode now. Its spinal chord is this driving percussion that sounds a lot like a series of footsteps, over which a series of instruments does this nice little riff. It sounds like marching on, like moving forward at a constant pace and finding little interesting and strange and wonderful things along the way. And between cuts through time and through space to where Faye is, this song persists. The same pace as the dogs running forward, as the ship the Bebop coasts through space, as Jet and Spike trudge through water. And contrasted against this movement is Faye, static and in the same place for most of this episode. Her dog loses again, and she says, well, what can you do? Races are all luck anyways. Spike and Jet find the treasure trove of players and decide, well, let's take this one. As they march forward with their electronics on their head, look how content these two look. It's a little bit being together on a genuinely interesting and unpredictable journey. It's a little bit that they were successful in trying to find the player, but notice that they're not even too bent up about playing it. The satisfaction is in having spent a nice day doing something engaging. Of course, they picked the wrong one, as Edward pops up to tell them that they got a VHS player, actually. The phone rings, and it's Faye seeing what the crew's up to. Ein answers, and it's funny that this stinky little dog can press buttons, but it's also another reminder that no one really gives a fuck that Faye's gone. Edward walks in, and Faye asks if anybody's been looking for her, or has called with anything scary. Edward correctly recalls that someone did call shouting and that it did need to be paid back, but it was the dork who had their Betamax broken. Faye misunderstands and says, I see, thinking that it's about her, and asks where Spike and Jet are. Edward again responds that they're disappointed and sad. Faye misunderstands again and says, I see. If that's how it is, I guess I have no choice but to come back. Of course, the boys are disappointed that they picked up the wrong player, but Faye, who can't help but to make it about her, realizes incorrectly that they must miss her. It's funny, it's supposed to be a comedy of errors where the stakes are ridiculously low. There are huge miscommunications that just wind up sort of confusing and hurting Faye's feelings. Another package arrives for Faye, which Jet pays for, kicking and screaming. The crew opens it, and inside is a Betamax player. This is also funny. It's supposed to be very strange that the big journey they took to get this thing dropped into their lap at the end. We're asked to consider what the real treasure is when fate is so fickle. Did the fact that they grabbed the wrong tape player matter? Should it have? Faye strolls in. It's very obvious that she's trying to be cool, saying, "Hey, how's it going, guys? Long time no see," which is met with one indifferent face and two very cold, callous looks. She expected to be met with relief and came back to a group that knew she'd come back and didn't miss her much when she was gone. It's funny, and a bit sad. The crew gathers in preparation to view the treasure. Jet kicks Faye out unless she fronts the delivery money, but she passes and walks out. And I'll just let this play in full because I can't accurately capture how brilliant it is. There's a lot here, and a stunning amount of it is so ineffable that it just kicks you for reasons you can't fully understand. Out of the mouth of babes hast thou ordained strength, indeed. There's some wisdom and sincerity from the version of ourselves unburdened by age, by hurt and heartbreak and being alone. It's difficult to stare candidly at who we were and the gradient into who we are. Life isn't a series of discrete moments and changes. It's a very, very long continuum. Chances to see ourselves plainly as we used to be are rare. It's bizarre to observe yourself as a stranger and as the only person you've ever been. Old ideas, old optimism, concerns that consumed us years ago that we can't recall and can't even really imagine feeling. Youth is lost on the young, but because the only way we can appreciate the freedom and warmth of what it feels like to grow up is to have grown up already. It stings badly, but it also imparts the sensation that the current phase of our life is one which we will appreciate in a few years, always a bit late. It's funny and sad and heartening to see who we once were and probably still are. Sometimes it stirs up so much, and for reasons we don't even fully understand. The only thing we can recall is that we seem not to remember. The ultimate privilege of youth is that it's the last period of your life where you're unaware of the fact that you'll miss it in a few years. We're very eager to grow up, eager to see who we'll become in adulthood. Going forward 10 years to see who you've become, however, is a different world to living 10 years of life, to getting older, to being heard and making wonderful memories and finding wonderful relationships. There's a uniquely selfish empathy to seeing who we used to be, in seeing a stranger who we want so badly to shelter. We are, after all, our only self.